Hello and welcome, I'm DarcyBits and it's time for another Pauper Commander review, counting down my top picks for new Pauper Commanders from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Pauper Commander is played with 99 common cards making up your deck, and one uncommon creature or vehicle in the command zone. No need for it to be legendary. It's played with 30 starting life, and 16 commander damage results in a loss. I always enjoy looking at new cards with this format in mind, as its deck building restriction can dramatically change the way each card should be assessed. For example, this set has a large theme of the ally creature type mattering, but when limited to only commons of your commander's color identity, there aren't enough to fill a deck if your commander is relying on you to be casting one every turn. Take a look at Haru Hidden Talent, a great example of the new earthbending mechanic that can go infinite in other formats, but as a Pauper Commander will be limited to a deck containing at most 11 other allies. Or I suppose 19 if you include changelings, which is a bit better than I initially thought, but still not enough to comfortably build a Allies Matter deck. Speaking of earthbending, as expected from an Avatar set, each of the 4 bending styles has been given a new mechanic to represent it. I'll explain each of them as they come up, so let's get started counting down the top 10 new Pauper Commanders from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Starting with number 10, the Boulder, Ready to Rumble. The Boulder, Ready to Rumble, is a 4-mana green 4/4 human warrior performer. Whenever the Boulder attacks, Earthbend X, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 4 or greater. This is our Earthbending representative. Earthbending is a mechanic that turns target land into a creature with 0/0 stats and puts X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is whatever the Earthbending value would be. This can target one of your normal non-creature lands, or it can target one you previously animated with Earthbending, giving it more counters. That creature gains haste, is still a land, and remains a creature until it dies or is exiled, at which point it is returned to the battlefield tapped. Earthbending is such a cool mechanic and has a lot of potential from just making bodies for attacking or blocking, to being combined with lands that sacrifice themselves for value and then return to do it over again, to getting additional landfall triggers. For our purposes, it's going to be pretty difficult to make anything especially exciting happen with the available commanders, making the Boulder the only reliably repeatable source of earthbending. As a unique mechanic, there isn't much of a direct comparison we can draw to existing commanders. I think there is some friction with being 4 mana and then needing to attack to get value, but the choice of making a body by animating a land or buffing a body by adding counters to a previously animated one is a strong effect, especially as it should compound as the game goes on, with the counters you hand out resulting in more and more 4+ power creatures on your side of the field. Number 9, Joo Dee, one of many. Joo Dee is a 2-mana black 2/2 human advisor with the ability black, tap, surveil 1. Create a token that's a copy of this creature, then sacrifice an artifact or creature. Activate only as a sorcery. I love the design of this card. The way it's templated like a legendary creature in its name, but isn't one, instantly sells the theme. It also means that they aren't actually legal as a commander outside of Pauper Commander, so I had to highlight them here. Joo Dee is interesting because even though they make extra copies of themselves, their ability costs 1 mana and tapping them, so they don't snowball as much as they could. Instead, their effect boils down to just upgrading what you sacrifice into a 2/2, and earning an extra use of their ability next turn. This can turn disposable tokens into bigger bodies, or replace temporary tokens with Joo Dees that will stick around. Once you have a number of Joo Dees, you can keep sacrificing bodies for as long as you can afford the cost. That said, I actually think the most useful place for Joo Dee is in decks where netting more total bodies isn't necessary, and instead you have cards that just need to see creatures or artifacts die or enter. Even though they aren't a free sack outlet, the way they create a body then sacrifice one as a single ability means even with only 1 Joo Dee and nothing to sacrifice, you can trigger all your cards that care without going down resources for only 1 mana. That would be creating a Joo Dee token and then sacrificing either it or the one you just tapped. And I haven't even talked about how you get to surveil every time you do this, which actually gives you very strong card selection and filling your graveyard all the while. I'm not sure how they're going to compete with other sacrifice-based decks compared to commanders that are either free sack outlets or provide their own value when something dies, but there's certainly a unique commander for this archetype, giving their deck an original identity instead of just doing the same thing as an existing commander, only a little bit better than before. This brings us to number 8, Gran-Gran. Gran-Gran is a 1-mana blue 1/2 human peasant ally. When Gran-Gran becomes tapped, draw a card, then discard a card. Non-creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast as long as there are 3 or more lesson cards in your graveyard. That last mode is our first instance of cards that care about lessons. Lessons are a subtype of instants and sorceries, and for the most part, cards that care about them don't function well in Pauper Commander, since there are so few options for the 99. If any lesson matters commander will work though, it will be one like Gran-Gran that just needs to meet a threshold instead of wanting enough lessons in your deck to consistently be casting them. I feel like getting 3 lessons in your graveyard won't be too difficult across most games, but I don't think it's even necessary to make Gran-Gran good. Instead, it's just bonus if it happens to happen. Simply drawing a card and discarding a card once every turn is a powerful effect on its own. This is far from the first commander that can do this, but it's the new, cheapest option. This effect usually isn't much of a build around, instead just smoothing out the operation of whatever your deck wants to be doing anyway. That said, drawing and discarding means you're filling your graveyard or triggering any ability that keys off of discarding, so there's potential to lean into either of those themes. Regardless, because of how she triggers when she's tapped instead of having a tap ability on her own, Gran-Gran encourages you to include effects that tap her as a cost for additional value, which can give your deck further identity. Being a triggered ability does come with some risk though. If you can't find a way of tapping her and have no safe attacks, you might wish she could just tap herself instead, making her less consistent than other similar commanders. Professor Zhao, Anthropologist, is an alternative in the same set, offering the consistency of having a tap ability. After Gran-Gran, they are the next cheapest commander with this ability, although they discard as a cost and draw instead of draw then discard, which is marginally worse. They do have the upside of a red and blue color identity, and a one-time sacrifice ability to recur an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. For a more direct approach with this same archetype, you might prefer Teo Spirited Glider. Instead of keying off of tapping specifically, Teo draws and discards whenever you attack with one or more flying creatures instead. This could be them or any other flyer you have, which potentially gives them more deck building direction, as well as the upside of handing out a +1/+1 counter if you discard a non-land. I think all 3 of these are great new options for any deck that wants draw and discard in the command zone, and it's more a matter of preference than sheer power. Number 7, Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper. Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper is a 3-mana blue and black 2/4 human druid ally. They have lifelink, and whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token with this token can't block or be blocked by non-spirit creatures. We've seen this effect a lot of times, where it uses the exact phrase, whenever you draw your second card each turn, as a trigger to make a creature token. The benefit of Spirit Keeper is that their actual body is very good, so it can participate in the rest of the match, blocking, gaining you life, and being much more difficult to remove compared to something like Mischievous Mystic. It also has the upside of giving you access to black mana, which opens up the opportunity to include cards that can sacrifice the tokens for value. Admittedly, the tokens can't block non-spirits, which is often a big advantage of tokens, but they also can't be blocked by non-spirits, which should make for very reliable attackers. Number 6, Water Tribe Rallier. Water Tribe Rallier is a 2-mana white 2/2 human soldier ally. It has Waterbend 5. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 3 or less from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Water Tribe Rallier is our waterbending representative. Waterbending is a type of cost that can be applied to any kind of ability, but is paid by tapping creatures, artifacts, or spending regular mana in any combination. I have high hopes for this effect as a lover of Larder Zombie, which has a very similar ability paid by tapping 3 creatures. From first-hand experience, it's not too difficult to get multiple uses out of an ability like this every turn. Water Tribe Rallier increases the cost to 5, but we can also tap artifacts or offset the cost with mana if necessary, and the effect of drawing us the best power 3 or less creature out of our top 4 is incredibly strong, especially in the kind of go-wide archetype that we want anyway. Keep in mind that this is not a sorcery speed ability, allowing us to keep up blockers throughout our opponent's turns, and then tap out to dig for more creatures in our opponent's end step. The alternative waterbender competing for this spot is Katara Bending Prodigy. Katara is blue instead of white, and for 1 more mana to cast and 1 more waterbending, can fully draw a card instead of only finding power 3 or less creatures. In the right deck, Rallier's ability is stronger because you get to look at 4, but Katara can draw anything. Katara also naturally grows every turn. Just by being tapped at the beginning of your end step, she'll get a +1/+1 counter. This can be because you tapped her for her own ability, or that you simply attacked with her. While both have a similar waterbending ability, the way Katara grows tends to lend herself more to Voltron than go wide. To this end, you could load her up with equipment, and that could tap to pay for her waterbending instead. Number 5, Sun Warriors. Sun Warriors is a 4-mana red and white 3/5 human warrior ally. They have Firebending X, where X is the number of creatures you control, and 5 mana, create a 1/1 white ally creature token. Firebending means when this creature attacks, add red mana equal to the firebending value. This is very strong, and I think all of the firebending uncommons are worth considering. Zuko, Exiled Prince, has firebending 3, making them the new strongest mana dork in red, as long as you can build around only having that mana available during combat. Azula on the Hunt has firebending 2, and makes a clue when they attack. Both of these have mana sinks built in, guaranteeing that you have at least something to do with the mana before it fizzles. In the case of Azula, she creates clues that can be sacked to draw a card, but notably, if you don't spend that mana drawing, the clues are still there later. Keep in mind that Azula is a mono-black commander. Since firebending is a keyword ability, the red mana symbol only appears in reminder text and does not affect color identity. While I think both of these options are worth discussion, my actual pick was Sun Warriors. The ceiling on Sun Warriors is absurd, and the floor is not bad either. Firebending X will always be at least 1 since they count themselves, which isn't very impressive, but as a 4-mana 3/5, I think they shouldn't be too hard to stick and should be able to make safe attacks consistently. Firebending also gives you a lot of unknown potential in combat, making it risky to block them since your opponent has to assume you have a combat trick to spend your floating mana on. Like a lot of other firebending cards, Sun Warriors provides its own mana sink, letting you spend 5 mana to make a 1/1. Not great, but it means that you can reliably grow your board, allowing them to snowball. Even if they didn't have the option, you're in colors that go wide very easily, making it not unreasonable to have a sizable board the first time they swing out. Number 4, Hei Bai, Spirit of Balance. Hei Bai is a 4-mana white and black 3/3 bear spirit. Whenever Hei Bai enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Hei Bai. When Hei Bai leaves the battlefield, put its counters on target creature you control. This is just a big one, and normally just a big creature doesn't impress me, but I think the numbers on this one work. Assuming you have something to sacrifice when you first cast them on turn 4, and you can get something else to sacrifice into play before they attack on the next turn, this is a 7/7 attacking on turn 5. If you sacrifice something again the next turn, that's 16 commander damage in 2 hits. Add in some evasive equipment, and this is a very reliable Voltron commander that doesn't even need to suit up with power increasing equipment. The fact that you can move the counters onto another creature if they get removed gives them a very solid backup plan, and it shouldn't be too hard to have a creature on board since you want your deck full of cheap disposable bodies to begin with. In the same vein, you could alternatively consider Mai Jaded Edge. Mai compares very directly to one of my top picks from Tarkir Dragonstorm, Jeskai Brushmaster. Both have prowess, and after exhausting Mai, both have double strike. This means every non-creature spell you cast will effectively pump them for +2, which could represent a very similar timeline to reaching the breakpoint of 16 commander damage. Keep in mind that the lack of evasion on both of these means they could easily get chump blocked, negating all their damage, but finding sources of trample or flying is generally not too difficult. Before moving on to my top 3, I wanted to slip in a few honorable mentions. These are cards that do some interesting or unique things that some players might find valuable, even if they don't represent enough pure power to make the full list. First, Appa Loyal Sky Bison is our only Airbender uncommon that provides a repeatable effect. The other uncommon Airbender is Aang the Last Airbender, who only airbends once as they enter. Airbending is potentially incredibly powerful, exiling a target which can then be recast by its owner for 2 generic mana. This means it has the versatility to be temporary removal or blink at a cost of 2. Appa gives us unique access to repeatable airbending, but they are pretty expensive and can only airbend our permanents. There are already other repeatable blink commanders, but none with an attack trigger. This could be an upside or a downside. I imagine most people would prefer Soul Herder, which triggers on each of your end steps and grows the Soul Herder whenever a creature is exiled. What really makes Appa unique is that they don't exclusively blink creatures. They can blink any non-land permanent that you control, which potentially opens up a lot more deck building options. Next is Princess Yue, and at first glance I thought their design was purely flavorful but not actually notable. But being able to scry 2 every turn is very good card selection, and what I originally overlooked is that when they become a land, they don't lose their abilities, so they can continue to scry after dying. Also, if you can play this on turn 3 and find a way to sacrifice it, it's actually immediate ramp and a mostly uninteractable source of Scry 2 every turn for the rest of the game, although only one or the other at any given time. This isn't a commander with an interesting build around, it's just a lot of value in the command zone that can facilitate any other mono blue deck archetype that you might want to run. Keep in mind that if you want her for the ramp aspect specifically, you might prefer an untapper like Irith, which, while vulnerable to removal, can scale throughout the game by untapping artifacts that make more than just 1 mana. Last is Hama the Bloodbender, who has incredibly strong burst potential, but with no control during deck building. I'm always skeptical of Snapcaster effects, even though historically they're quite good. They just seem awkward to line up since you need the mana to cast them and enough mana to cast the flashback spell. They're also just not very interesting as a commander since they're a one-shot effect. Especially so if you can only target your opponent's spells like with Hama, since you have no control over what's available. That said, I think Hama overcomes these issues for a number of reasons. Getting to pay for the spell with waterbending means you can build around Hama playing a junk token, maybe full affinity deck as a baseline, for a functional deck before casting Hama. Then, when a strong spell becomes available throughout the course of the game, you can cast Hama and tap down your accumulated junk to cast that spell for possibly no additional mana. Then, since you're in blue and black, you can use a combination of blink spells and feign death effects to continue to trigger her ability throughout the rest of the game. I don't know if this is going to line up in practice like it does in my head, but Hama is definitely the card I overlooked the most before coming back around on, and now it is the one I am most excited for. Which brings us to our top 3 Pauper Commanders. Number 3, Zhao, Ruthless Admiral. Zhao, Ruthless Admiral is a 4-mana black and red 3/4 human soldier. They have Firebending 2, and whenever you sacrifice another permanent, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. I think Firebending 2 is the breakpoint where it becomes worth it. A 2-mana mana dork is just so much more impressive than a 1-mana one, but the value in Zhao is the second ability, pumping your entire board when you sacrifice anything. That could be a treasure, or a land, or a clue, or a blood. Once you have a board full of junk and a wide enough army, you are threatening to delete anyone who can't block. And the extra push of mana from Firebending will hopefully be enough to fuel any spells or abilities to sacrifice what you need at instant speed when it comes to close out the game. Number 2, Long Feng, Grand Secretariat. Long Feng Grand Secretariat is a 3-mana green-black 2/3 human advisor. Whenever another creature you control or a land you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Long Feng is both good played fairly and can go infinite in multiple ways. As I always say, being able to hand out counters to any creature you control is such a big benefit compared to when a commander only grows itself. And this would still be good without that versatility, because it is such a consistent and fast-growing effect not limited to once a turn or needing non-tokens to die. In addition to creatures, it triggers on lands as well, appearing to be designed for earthbending because they hit the graveyard before returning. But it also triggers off of any fetch land, which since the last set, we now have 9 at common with no additional cost, and 7 more if you're willing to spend 1 mana to crack them. And number 1, Longshot Rebel Bowman. Longshot Rebel Bowman is a 4-mana red 3/3 human rebel ally. They have reach, and non-creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Longshot deals 2 damage to each opponent. This is a gutter snipe stapled to an Electromancer. It's becoming a trend that these effects get my first place spot in my top 10s, but they're just so good, and this has to be the best one we've ever seen. Every non-creature spell dealing damage to each opponent, and those spells cost 1 less to cast, is just so pushed compared to keying off of or discounting only instants and sorceries. I really don't think there's anything else that needs to be said. This has been my top 10 Pauper Commanders from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I've been Darcy Bits. Have a good night.